The Newtown, Connecticut community is mourning after the father of a Sandy Hook victim was found dead from an apparent suicide. Police found Jeremy Richman's body yesterday. His 6-year-old daughter was killed in her elementary school more than 6 years ago. Richman is the third person connected to a mass shooting to take their own life in the last 10 days. David Begno has more from Newtown.
Avielle had a beautiful 2,250 days in this world.
After the death of Avielle Richman, her parents, Jeremy Richman and Jennifer Hensel, wanted to channel their grief into something positive.
As you can imagine, that turns your world around quite a bit. You feel like the world's just spinning out of control and you're going to get spun off if you don't do something to grasp onto.
Richman, who was a neuroscientist, said that he and his wife created the Avielle Foundation to prevent violence and to promote compassion through brain research.
We just need to recognize that the brain is an organ that can be healthy or unhealthy, and we need to take care of it.
On Monday, more than 6 years after his daughter was murdered at Sandy Hook Elementary School, Richman apparently took his life. Newtown's police chief, James Viadero, responded to the scene.
Here's an individual that was an advocate trying to prevent these type of events from happening. There is some irony there. It's a little unnerving to see it happen to him.
We have to recognize what it means to be and strive to be humane.
Just last Tuesday, Richman spoke about brain health at Florida Atlantic University, which is only about a 20-minute drive from the town of Parkland. 2 survivors of the school shooting there died in apparent suicides last week. Psychiatrist Victor Schwartz.
If you notice your loved one or friend struggling, reach out to them and get them connected to the support they need, because it can make a life-saving difference.
I want to bring in Dr. Daniel Bober. He's a forensic psychiatrist and former mental health policy fellow. Dr. Bober, thank you for joining us. 3 people just in the past few days, all of them committing suicide and connected to mass shooting, and survivor's guilt comes up quite a bit. How do you catch this and prevent this from happening?
Well, survivor's guilt is a fairly common phenomenon. There are certain things that put you at greater risk for it. For example, if you have a history of depression, low self-esteem, or childhood trauma. But it's something that can actually blossom into full-blown PTSD, where you're having nightmares and flashbacks and hypervigilance. And sometimes it requires, actual treatment with medication and therapy.
You talk about the treatment. After mass shootings, we talk so much about securing our schools, making sure they're safe, making sure people feel like a community again. Should we be talking more about mental health and how to make sure that these people, even years later, 6 years later, for this father to commit suicide after investing so much in making sure this doesn't happen to people?
I think there are things that we can do to be proactive. For example, the same way we talk about how do we prevent the next school shooting, a lot of these techniques can be used to prevent the next suicide. In other words, using staff to identify kids at higher risk, teachers, parents, if something is off about your kid, try to get them help, access to mental health care, no access to lethal means such as firearms, securing your firearms. These are all things that we can do to try to prevent this from happening. And I just want to say, as someone who has worked with Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, there is a resource, a free resource for students, faculty, either past, present, or future, to get help. And it's called the Eagles Haven Center. And it is a wellness center only for people associated with this tragedy to get help free of charge. And I just want to give the contact information. It is funded by the United Way and the Children's Services Council, and it is administered by JAFCO, or Jewish Adoption Family Care Options, and the phone number is area code 954-315-8688, or reach out at eagleshaven@jafco.org, and that is a free service for people associated with the Parkland tragedy.
I appreciate you putting that out there so people know that's available. But, if kids are behind in math, if they're behind in reading, we've got specialists at schools all across this country to help them. Should we have mental health care providers in every single school, not just to deal with issues of special needs children or if your child is struggling in a particular sector, but particularly to deal with students who might just be okay, but then suddenly find they've got no resources to talk?
You want to know, we should have access to mental health care. But remember something, it's like what we see in the subway. If you see something, say something. The people that will notice this first are the teachers, are the parents. Those are the people that need to say, hey, you need to see a counselor, you need to see a psychiatrist. So they're really the ones on the front line that will get the red flag first and know that further treatment is needed.
No one ever thinks they'll be involved in any sort of mass shooting. You know, we see this coming time and time again. My question for you, doctor, I want to end on is, what do we need to do to be watchful of these warning signs? I mean, for this father to take his life 6 years later, what could we have maybe watched in a person like that could have been a red flag?
Any change in their, baseline in terms of their behavior? Are they becoming more withdrawn? Are they losing weight? Are they isolating themselves? Is their habits in terms of the appetite and sleep changing? These are all things that the people closest to them will notice, hey, this person is not acting like themselves. I really need to reach out and encourage them to get help.
It's a good reminder for all of us. I want to thank you so much, Dr. Daniel Bober.
My pleasure.
And I also want to mention the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is open 24 hours a day for anyone needing help. That number is 1-800-273-8255.